Hi there, so in this video I'm going to have a go at making the eccentric strap and sheave. So I've set the strap up in this 4-jaw chuck and I've centred it by putting a dial gauge on the edges. I'm pretty close. So the idea now is to face it, use a centre drill, and then use a fairly large drill, but not larger than 9/16 of an inch, and then it needs to be bored out to 0.625 of an inch. So this is a 5mm drill bit. (9mm). 14mm. I just thought I'd try out my new boring head. I've never used it before, and I'm not too happy with the result, to be honest. Now, I don't know whether that's because I've got it in the tailstock and there might be a bit of movement there. Maybe there's a bit of movement on the Morse tape. I don't know. So what I'm going to do is, for this piece of work, I'm going to revert back to my boring bar, which I'm more familiar with. And with the boring bar I can use the power feed. So I'm a lot happier with that finish. So what I'll do is I'll carry on and until I reach a diameter of 0.625 of an inch. So that's a perfect fit, and the finish inside is absolutely superb. So now it's a matter of parting it off and then cleaning up the other side. Tubal Cain suggests cleaning the face of this up in the 4-jaw chuck, but it's so thin. I'm just going to use some wet and dry. There's about 1/16 out to come off, so I think that's the low risk option. So now I need to drill and tap to 7BA. This is for the eccentric rod. So this hole needs to be 7BA clear. So what I'll do is I'll drill halfway with this 2.5mm drill bit. Then I'll switch it round and drill from the other side. And then once I'm through, I'll drill again with a 2.7mm drill bit, so the 7BA bolt can pass through it. And I'll just cut the slit in the side using this slitting saw. Now with the sheave, Tubal Cain talks about hardening the steel and then using a 3-jaw chuck with some packing to off-centre it, so you can drill a hole where I've made that little mark. Now he produced a formula for calculating the thickness of this sort of spacer or the packing to go that side, I guess, to move it off. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it gives you the answer, but I like to work things out, and I can't get to the answer based on this formula. Anyway, what I've decided to do is I'm going to use a 4-jaw chuck. So I'm going to chuck it up and centre it on that point. Then I shall drill the hole and ream it. I think it's 1/4 inch. Once I've done that, I shall then create the boss. Once I've created the boss, I shall then put it in a 3-jaw chuck, and I shall cut the groove on the outside, and then I shall part it off. Well, in the end I decided to drill with a 3mm drill bit, then a 5, and then a 6mm running at around about 500 RPM. So this is my 1/4 inch reamer, and I'll be reaming at a speed of about 200 RPM. So now I need to create the boss. So the boss is 5/32 of an inch deep, which is 156 thou. So I've just put this dial gauge on here to measure 156 thou. So that's 100, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 6. And I've just put a stop on the carriage, so I can't go beyond that point. So now it's just a matter of taking light cuts and reducing it down to the right diameter. Well, it seems to be working okay, so I'll continue and then I'll get back to you. Well, that was quite easy and it turned out okay, so I'll just switch it to a 3-jaw chuck. So this parting tool is a 1/16 of an inch wide, and I need to cut a groove a 1/16 of an inch from this front edge, and it needs to be 3/64 of an inch deep. So I'll do that off camera. I'll also just clean the side up with a bit of very fine emery, and then I'll part it off. Okay, just to check that I'm parting off in the right place, I've just put the strap on just to make sure that the two faces are flat against each other, which they are. Well, everything seemed to be going to plan until I parted it off, and I've realised that the groove isn't dead centre. However, when it's actually in the strap and the eccentric rod is inserted, you can't really tell that that's an issue. However, the more worrying thing is the fact that this groove is a 1/16 of an inch wide as per the design, but the end of this rod is a couple of thou greater than a 1/16 of an inch, so it doesn't actually fit in there, only the tip does. So having parted it off, I've got a bit of a dilemma, but I think what I'm going to do, whether this works or not I don't know, I'm going to stick it back on the piece I've just parted it off from. So I put a bit of brass rod in, and I'll use this Loctite 638 to lock it up, and I think I can just get the edge in the 3-jaw chuck and just take a couple of thou off the edge there. So I'll have a go at doing that off camera, and I'll get back to you with the result. Well, the Loctite 638 worked a treat, and I managed to take a couple of thou off the side of the groove, so the rod fits in perfectly now. I'm a bit disappointed that I've not got it exactly centre. Now I don't think it'll actually affect the running of the machine, but when the rod's in place, it is slightly off centre. More of a visual thing, I think, as opposed to, you know, a mechanical problem. If I get time at some point in the future, I think I might have a go at making that centre again. But anyway, let's crack on. Well, I've got a bit of a problem. The valve rod gland nut is made out of a piece of 4BA hex with a 3/16 by 40 TPI thread on the end. Now, I turned it down to 3/16. I'm not sure whether it might have been a thou over or not, but when I cut the threads seem to have stripped. Terrible, really. So that's waste now. So what I need to do is to make another one out of this piece of brass bar that I've got. I've managed to cut the threads okay on the end. The hole down the centre is 3/32 of an inch, and that's highlighted yet another problem, because the stainless steel rod for the valve rod is it says it's 3/32 of an inch, but actually it's about a thou and a half over. So what I'm going to have to do when I make the valve rod, I'm going to have to sort of emery that down just slightly so it fits into the hole. So anyway, what I'll do off camera is I'll create the hex using this Stephenson's collet block. Well, that seems to have worked out very well. So I just need to put it back onto the lathe and part it off. Well, I must say I'm very happy with the way that's turned out. Well, I've managed to make the valve rod okay, and I did have to emery the diameter down a little bit by a couple of thou, but that now moves nicely. However, I've just found another problem in the fact that the hole in here that will be taking a bush that I need to make, that hole is off centre. So what's happened, when I originally made this hole. As per Tubalcane's instructions, I drilled from this side here, but with the drill being so small in diameter, it's wandered off centre. So that's a major dilemma really now, how to address that problem. The only thing I can think of is to come in from this side. So if I machine this end off a little bit and drill in with a large drill bit and create another bush, and address it that way. But I'll do a bit of work on the internet investigating, see whether anybody else has had that problem and what other solutions might be around. So I'm going to just mill off the end of this boss, and then I'll drill the centre out with a view to putting in a brass bush. Okay, so I decided to drill the boss out with a 1/4 of an inch diameter drill bit. Now I've made this little piece of brass which is inserted into the 1/4 of an inch hole, so it's spot on. A 1/4 of an inch in diameter is the brass, apart from obviously the end bit. And I've used some Loctite 638 just to temporarily lock it in place. Then what I've done is taken a 3/32 of an inch drill bit and drilled from this side through again, and tried to make it more central. Now I don't know whether you can see there, but the actual hole isn't in the centre of this piece of brass that I've inserted, so that actually goes to show that the original hole was way off. So I'm quite satisfied that that hole within the brass is centred. So what I'll now do is to take this piece of brass out, and I'll machine a bush to go inside the piece of brass. So the bush will be outside diameter 3/32 of an inch, and the inside diameter will be 0.07 of an inch to accommodate that. Well, this is an extremely tiny bush. And the idea is that will fit in there. So I'll Loctite this in. That will then be inserted in the end of the boss, and that will be a slide fit in there, hopefully. Well, that turned out to be a bit fiddly, but I got there in the end. The shaft runs nice and smoothly. You can see on the end where I fitted the bush, but it's fairly tidy. And also off camera I made this fork based around Tubalcane's instructions. Also off camera I drilled and tapped for the grub screw. Messed up slightly on that. I just caught the edge here with the centre drill, which is a bit annoying. And also off camera I've drilled and tapped for the oilers on the main bearings. So those are 1/8 of an inch by 40, and I also tapped the exhaust outlet, and that's 3/16 by 40, and I've put this little union on. So there we have it. Well, I don't know what happened there, but I seem to encounter problem after problem. And I think that aligning this rod in the steam chest, I think that is one of the most difficult things with this S50. And to be honest, I'm not too sure how I'd tackle it next time around. But anyway, I seem to have got there, and the good news is that's all the components made. So in my next video I'll be doing a test assembly and doing the valve timing and giving it a trial run. So this is the really exciting bit to come. So hope to see you next time. I just couldn't wait to see how this valve assembly works.